Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz trumpeter Franco Ambrosetti. He was born in Lugano, Switzerland, and is the son of Flavio Ambrosetti, an alto-saxophonist, bandleader, and BeBop pioneer in the European jazz scene in the 40s. He went to the University of Zurich, then moved to Basel, where he eventually earned a master's degree in economics. In '67, he had his American debut at the Monterey Jazz Fest with his father's quintet, and for over 3 decades he has juggled between an intense professional activity in the music field and his role as the executive in the family business. He's a very interesting man, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends. Yeah, hi, Franco.
Yeah.
It's Joe Domino in the United States, Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes, I can hear you.
How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you. Nice to hear you.
Nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out for me today.
No problem, no problem. It's a pleasure.
So, I'm going to go ahead and start off here and ask you, what has been going on with you lately?
Well, I just was in New York not long ago. Toward the end of January, I did a record for my 75th birthday, which was a kind of party at a two-system studio in Brooklyn. And I had a huge band. I mean, of course, not all together, but all the friends that have been, in a way or another, near my career in those many years were there. So it was, I started to name them. We had Kenny Barron, we had Buster Williams, Terry Lynn Carrington, as well as Jack DeJohnette. They were also playing a duet together. And then I had Randy Brecker, John Scofield, my son, Greg Osby, and myself. That's about it. I had 2 more Italian pianists. They came on purpose for, they were in New York, but they were coming into the studio on purpose for that, and this is Dada Moroni and Antonio Farao. I forgot one. I forgot Uli Kane, who is also playing one song on that album that will be released in, I guess, in summer. Right on. That's perfect, man. That sounds like a great trip. Talk to me about your childhood in Lugano, Switzerland, growing up. Your father, Flavio, was a very noted musician, bandleader, BeBop pioneer. Talk to me about growing up and how you got interested and so into jazz. I grew up in a family where the only music we were listening to was jazz. In fact, I had in my life 2 choices. Either hate jazz or become one of them. And the second choice was easier for me because somehow I inherited some of this DNA that my father had, which contains a lot of blues and jazz, and so it was easy for me to become a musician. I never had any problems in understanding anything of what concerned jazz, and even trumpet. In fact, is a difficult instrument by itself. I have a very good relationship with the trumpet too. Of course, sometimes I have problems with my chops like anybody else, especially trumpeters. But generally speaking, it was an easy approach to me, and it was a natural way of growing up. I remember Toots Tillemans when he was departing for the United States, because he had been hired by George Shearing as a guitar player, of course. At that time he wasn't playing, he was playing, but nobody knew that he was playing harmonica. I remember that he was amazed. I was 10 years old, and he was asking me, why don't you sing some bebop? So I was singing all the Charlie Parker songs from Now's the Time to Private or whatever. I just knew them because for me it was the easiest thing in the world, and for him, who was from a different generation, he couldn't understand how it could be easy for a kid to sing something so complicated with like Charlie Parker's compositions. And for me, it was not complicated at all, because it was what I was listening since I was born. As easy as that. It just went into my ears. That's it.
Well, with that in mind, since it was so easy, was it a natural fit for you to be on stage when you started out in '61 with Romano Mussolini?
Yeah.
What was it easy? Was it easy for you to get on stage? Was it natural?
Well, yes, it was very natural. Besides the fact that I was very anxious and very nervous, and was the first time on stage, because one thing is being at home and playing by yourself with records, and the other thing is being suddenly in front of a lot of people that know what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And there I was afraid. That was the first time. But after the second note, it was already okay.
So over your career, you've put out 26 plus albums. You've been featured on 50 as a special guest. You played with all kinds of people and evolved so much. How do you feel about your career? How have things gone for you?
Well, I think I was a very happy musician. I had a very happy life. I had a very happy in the sense that I had absolutely no problem at all in contacting all these great guys that in fact were professionals. I was, as you probably know, I was also an industrialist, and I graduated in economics because I have a master in economics. Yes, we had companies and landing gears for airplanes, also McDonnell Douglas, American companies and others. And I became eventually the CEO. And but the fact that I was working for my own company, from the family company, it is very easy then to get out and have the possibility to play. And of course, not as every professional musician. I didn't have to play 250 concerts a year. I was playing some 30 or 40, that's all. And I still do the same, even that now I sold all the companies and I'm basically playing only music. But I think that 30 to 40 concerts a year, including some tours and the recording, it's enough. And that's my, let's say, my rhythm. And I go like this. But I could do it also then when I was responsible for managing the company. And that's it. So I did only, I did two professions, basically. But it is possible to make two professions. There are lawyers there. They can play also an instrument. The problem is that most of the time they dedicate more time to the profession because they have to earn money and then to music. And I dedicated a lot of time. I've been practicing every day all my life because trumpet is not an instrument that you can live by sight. After a week you are gone. You have to start all over again. So that's it.
So did playing music make you a better businessman? Did they both kind of play off of each other? Were you happier as a businessman being a musician?
I think so. I definitely think so. Because basically, the creativity is very important in both fields. Business as well as music. Being creative and having fantasy and being enthusiastic in what you do, both things. That's probably what takes you far. And I think I became a better businessman because I was a jazz musician. And probably I also became, not musically speaking, but in the managing of a career, I became a better jazz musician from that point of view, from, if you want, from the bureaucratic point of view. I became a better one because I had knowledge on how business goes.
So, over your career, you've been fortunate enough to play with the likes of Kenny Barron, David Sanchez, Michael Brecker, Phil Woods. What did you learn from these guys? They have a wealth of experience. What did you learn from them?
I learned a lot from them, especially from Mike Brecker. I always been, my first idol was, of course, Clifford Brown. And I belong to that school still. But a little bit later, I found out that John Coltrane was a very interesting guy. And I started to copy all the licks that he was doing, although on trumpet it's very difficult. The only guy who succeeded playing in this intervallic kind of stuff was Woody Shaw. And we were practicing together when he was living in Paris. This is one of the things I wanted to tell you before, but I forgot. At that time, in the 60s, between the end of 50s and the beginning of the 60s, most of the best American musicians were in Paris. Art Taylor, Bud Powell, Kenny Clark, Donald Byrd, you name it. Dexter were all there. Johnny Griffin. They all left the States, and somehow they were living in Paris. And of course, for us, it was like going without paying any charge to the university every time you would play with them, you see. And then you grow. When you are 20, 21, 22, you learn fast. And that's the way I had the chance to know these people, also because my father knew them, and my father was also the founder of the Festival of Lugano. So all the musicians came to Lugano. They were in our house. Norman Granz had a house in Lugano for about 5-6 years. So most of the jazz musicians that were passing here were seeing either Norman or my father, and so it's like being part of the family without effort. That's it. Later on, when I started, let's say, to do the big festivals, after I won the first prize in Vienna as a trumpeter, where Randy became second and I was first, and we still are very good friends, Randy Brecker and I. And after that, I started frequenting the big festivals like Berlin and so on. All these guys like John Scofield, when he was there, he was very young, and I was young too. He wasn't known at all. I mean, you meet these people when they are just starting or just at the beginning of their career. Then they become the top stars, but you're still friends from them, and then from that time. So it's quite easy to call them, and I mean, if they appreciate the music you do, then they play with you. It's that simple as that.
I'm really glad you brought up the John Coltrane American connection to Europe. I've always been interested to ask those that live in Europe, why has it been throughout the history of jazz that Europe has been more, there's just been a bigger, more devout fan base, and musicians want to go there? Why is that? Being someone that lives there in Europe and comes to America, why is that?
They found in a way that in Paris, especially at those times, there was this club called the Blue Note. It was long before the record company existed. And I think they lived better here. There was no hassle being a black guy, all these things that in the 50s and 60s in the States probably made a difference. Not today anymore like it used to be, at least not in New York. But at that time, I think it was one of the reasons that took them here. And they were treated very well, and that's why Paris was really a center for all these Americans, and they stayed there for. Many stayed there over time, like Kenny Drew and those guys. They were staying. Later on, they moved to Copenhagen or Stockholm, and I mean, they went to Scandinavia, which is a very open country. I mean, was at that time. Now with the immigration, everything has been changing, but at this time, it was like this. So I guess it is really a life choice. Johnny Griffin, he had a castle in France, and he was spending most of his time there. And after having had a very successful career and probably enough money, you could afford to stay in Paris. And since a lot of your friends are there too, so it was a kind of movement that lasted about 10 years. And then a couple of guys died, and some others went back to the States. And then since then, it never happened anymore. There's so many important guys, musicians, really, I mean, inventors that did jazz what it is today, that they were coming to Europe, that didn't happen anymore. Some guys are still around here. They come and maybe they come and go. Keith Jarrett, he was for 2-3 years in Switzerland, but never as long as this bunch of big stars in the 60s. We were lucky.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Why do you love jazz?
I have no idea. It's part of my life. It's like asking me why my heart beats. I don't know. It does. It's my life. It's my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Hallelujah. So let me ask you this. You've had a great career. You've done so many things. You've performed in so many places and had such a long road. How do you want the world of jazz to remember you? I know you're not finished and you still perform and you're still doing it the right way, but how do you want the world of jazz to remember you and what you've done?
It's a question I never asked myself. For the main reason is that whatever answer I would give, it wouldn't probably be the right one. I just wanted to be accepted as a musician, like many others that try to do the job as good as it can. I mean, I'm a professional in music. I've been a professional also as a CEO, but there is a big difference between America and Europe, where America is somehow much more free toward somebody who does two professions. Yeah. If you do two professions and you go to the next board meeting and you tell them that you are a jazz trumpeter, they look at you in a strange way. And the same thing goes with the critics that look at you and say, "Oh, but this guy this guy runs a company. I mean, how can he play trumpet?" In the States, it's totally the opposite. If you have success in one of your fields, jazz, for instance, and at the same time you have also success in the other field, which is business, you are a better person, not a worse one like here in Europe. And I have a very good example for that. When I was playing at Bradley's for a whole week in 1992, it was, or 93, something like this, I had to go to Missouri, I had to go to St. Louis, to the McDonnell Douglas, because I had to sign a contract that for landing gears for F-18s that are still around. The ones we made for them, we made 400 landing gears. And everybody knew in the club where I was playing at Bradley's, everybody knew, all the guys that were there. I was playing with Otto Moroni, but there was Big Goodwin on drums and Kenny Washington on... anyway, everybody knew, and the owner, the lady that owns, I forgot her name, and she was a very nice person and apparently very stingy in a way. And I asked if I could leave a little bit before, instead of doing 3 sets, if I could do only 2. And she said, yes, okay, because I had to get up early and go to St. Louis. And she said, but you'll be here tomorrow at 9:30 when we start the first set. Yes, said, of course. When I came back, and everybody knew I was going to get $1 million contract, or not. I was going to sign, but it wasn't 100% sure. And when I came back and I had all my files with me, it was like 5 kilos of paper with terms and conditions and all these things that you have to sign in the United States because of the legal system that you have. And I came into the club, they look at me, and she opened a bottle of champagne because she understood that my business was successful. You see, this would never happen in Europe. Wow. They would look at you in another way and say, oh, this guy, my God, why does he play trumpet? I mean, you see, here it's a different culture here. Here, to be considered a serious musician, you have to starve and you have to be poor. Otherwise, if you drive a Ferrari, it's difficult that they consider you a serious musician. Although Miles had a Ferrari, he had 2. Yeah, we can learn from America and those things a lot.
That's interesting. My final question for you is this. Speaking of learning, what has music, being a musician and loving music, taught you about life? How has it benefited you?
It's, again, like asking me why I breathe. It is jazz, music in general, because it's not only restricted to jazz. I had 8 years of classical piano. Then I still listen a lot to classical music, like every jazz musician. So it's not only jazz, but I practice jazz. I mean, I'm a jazz musician, and I wouldn't be able to play a Hummel concerto for trumpet. I mean, it takes too much time to learn this, to to do something that somebody else wrote, and you should be playing it perfect. This is not. I think improvisation is much more important, and that's the big asset that jazz brought in the 20th century. For me, music is just a part of my life, like the air, like the sun, like the sky, like the world. I mean, I can't think of myself without music. I'm always playing something in my head. Right now, as I was writing something when you just called. Music is always present in my, and I think whether it made me a better person or not, I don't know, because I don't have a proof of the contrary. Maybe I would have been. I'm sure I would have been a worse person if I wouldn't have had music. But you can't prove it. I mean, there is no proof for it.
Yeah, beautiful. Franco, thank you for taking some time out for me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Too. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in America, Switzerland, Italy, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Franco for his time, his story, and all of that music. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for all things Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.